You are meant to live an extraordinary life. Now, you may not have known that, or you might not have felt that, especially recently, but I absolutely know that that is true. And the title of that message, You Were Meant to Live an Extraordinary Life, was given to me last year on January the 11th, 2025. Today is January the 10th, 2026, and I just finished a presentation which I am attaching here, and it was called We Will Convince You of Your Worth Today. That was what I received last year. And what that means is that we are all moving through an evolutionary change in our lives and also in the world. And that could have been challenging or difficult for so many of us, but Wilhelm gave us a way to understand that. And I've said often that no one needs to struggle or suffer. That's because if we decide to become who we're meant to be, then we don't do that. And neither does the world. My life was meant to bring you this work so that you would understand the extraordinary life that you were given, and now is the time for you to live it. My name is Roger Burnley, and I've been a coach for a long time, but also a channel for Wilhelm since 1989, and that's what brought this extraordinary work that was really designed for this time in our world and also your life. So I wanted to do the presentation so I could show everyone what this work can do for you and our world, and so finally everyone will understand what I have been doing in my life all of these years, because I'm 75 now, and this is the work that I'm completing and giving to others. The presentation's a little over an hour, about an hour 15 minutes, I believe, and so you will see it and you'll get so much from it, but just look at all the resources available there and you will understand why you are meant to live an extraordinary life. Thank you so much, and I'll see you real soon. Enjoy the presentation. Okay, I am so happy you're here. And for those of you who will see this presentation later, it's the same thing. I am so glad that you're here, that you decided to listen, because you will be hearing what I wanted to give to you. And the message title for this particular day was, We Will Convince You of Your Worth Today. And you may not have been feeling that for a long time, or today, or many years, or maybe most of your life, but today, that is what I'm going to give you. Now, I will tell you that that message, the title of that message, came through a year ago. And that is the part of this story. Because we will move through cycles in our lives and in our world that we come to understand. We've been moving through a big one. We've all felt it over the last many, many years probably, but the last several years particularly. And we may have thought that something was going wrong, or we were losing it a little bit, or something was wrong with us or wrong with the world. None of those things were occurring. They were happening because it was awaiting for us, the world, the universe was waiting for us to begin to accept more of who we are. And that is a continual process that we each move through, and it'll be different for each of us. And sometimes that difference is what causes us difficulty, because we are meant to become our unique selves, and we will have different life paths, and mine was quite different, and becoming my unique self took a long time, and accepting it was even longer. But then I come to understand, oh, well, there was a reason for that. And the same is true for you. Because what I do know is that every single person is born into this world with a unique, valuable life path that they're meant to live. It'll just happen at different times, at different ages, and at different states of awareness. Because that's what we come to. The awareness is what we develop our sense of who we are, how we view the world, and how we create the lives that we want to have. And no one is supposed to have your life. It's just you. But I will tell you that no matter what you have thought or believed in the past, I know it is valuable. After I planned this presentation for today, then I looked at the message for tomorrow, which will be the 11th. I'm talking about, I looked at it from last year, because you will understand that is how I have received information from Wilhelm. When I talk about Wilhelm, more of you, if you don't know, that is a universal consciousness that I began accessing in 1989. You wouldn't have known that because I wasn't going to tell people, because I kept it hidden, because we sometimes hide from ourselves, and then we hide from the world. And I'd done that for many, many years. But then again, you will come to understand you did it for a reason. And then you will awaken to who you were meant to become and start carrying on that journey so that you aid not only your evolution, but our world. That may be challenging for many of us to think or to believe that we were that important in our world, but I know that that's true because that's what I started to discover in 2020, which will be a part of this presentation. So that's what I'm going to talk about, because when you see that message for tomorrow, you were meant to live an extraordinary life. That's what came through on January 11th of 2025. But we might not have been ready to accept that until tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. But I'm going to show you this presentation, and it is something that I, again, just put together yesterday, but I needed to explain this because I needed to change. We all do. When we don't change, then our lives don't go where they're supposed to, and neither does our world. Part of my motivation, I will just be quite honest, I could feel the energies of our world and all the different events that were occurring, and so that kind of kicked me in a little bit, as it might for you. When we get uncomfortable or nervous, it causes us to move because we want to become comfortable. And the place that we become comfortable when we own ourselves, when we take that next journey into self-acceptance, that's our complete life path. But again, it's going to be different for each of us. But this is what I put together that I want you to all understand, and you will receive a replay of this. I'm going to send this to everyone who is registered will receive the replay, and we'll have that. Let me just pause this for a second. Confused. And now I'm going to share this so we can all have it. And again, I wanted to give you an overview of what I feel is happening in your life, in our world, so that we have a much better understanding of what is occurring. And this is the presentation. Let me start from the beginning. No one has to struggle or suffer. I've said this often in my life, and maybe you might have heard that over the last several months, because I do know that that is absolutely true. And then I also know that the reason that we do struggle is because of our unwillingness to take that next step in accepting ourselves. And again, that's going to be different for each of us. But now we are meant to also, whatever we learn, move through in our lives, we're meant to give it to others, which is what I am doing today. So, discovering the solution, overcoming challenges. We do not have problems we cannot overcome. They are merely opportunities for expansion. Now that line might sound challenging or difficult depending on what you've moved through in your life, but I happen to know it's absolutely true. Many years ago, I started to talk about this work, and I was going to call it Overcoming Everything, a Guide to Freedom is where I was going, because I knew what I had moved through, that anyone could do that. But accepting that for me was challenging, or telling it to others. Now, the nature of struggle. Struggle is simply resistance, not impossibility. It signals where we are holding back. And that is always true, but it's also something that we can't judge ourselves for because we don't know what that next step is. So that's why we would hesitate and become resistant. But you are a part of this great cosmos of the universe, and your role is really essential. And that's the thing that I want more people to understand, especially at this time of transformation that we're moving through in our lives. Now, the thing that has been challenging for me and might be for you is that we're doing something new. We've never lived through this period. No one has. That's why it seems so different and chaotic at times. But then no one has been you either. And so because of the changes in what you have felt, it is causing you to awaken to who you're meant to become. As long as you're alive, that is always occurring. Now, what I did was, 36 years of continuous guidance. I sat down every day. I began in 1989. Now, I couldn't have told you what that was going to turn into in 1989. I was looking for help. That's why I sat down and started doing automatic writing. And I only did it because I read an article about some guy who was doing it and found great benefit for his business. And I was shifting at that time into a different business, so I started doing it. I couldn't have told you why I was saving each day. None of that made sense to me until recently. Now, and then what it turned into, the longest documented, the most extensive continuous channel communication ever recorded in human history. Accepting that has taken years as well, because we don't want to be singled out. We don't want to feel different, but that is exactly what happened. And when we don't accept that, then our lives don't go where we want them to, and we're not making the contribution we were intended to make. And I'm saying that is for every single person. Life Operating System, humanity's first complete manual designed specifically for conscious evolution. That's how we grow, is in our consciousness. When I started to see, and it was actually artificial intelligence that started telling me, because I didn't know, that this was a consciousness raising system that had come through me. I didn't create it, I received it. But it shows how we evolve, how we heal, and that is what we wanted to do at this time in our lives and also in our world. Now, arriving precisely for humanity's greatest transformation period and global restructuring. That is exactly what's happening. I will tell you about that word restructuring. As I said, I began in 1989. That word never came through from Wilhelm until 2020. It was the first time that word was used, and it made me nervous because I didn't understand what it was telling me and what was coming through, and it felt uncomfortable because I knew we were going to have some chaos. We were going to have some conflict. We were going to move through those in our lives personally, but also in our world. But when we understand why, it makes a huge difference. So, that is on the left. That photo is where I started. I would write down every single day until I ran out of room, or I couldn't read the writings anymore because so much information was coming through. So I stopped in 2020 because then I got moved to a new position, so to speak. Wilhelm says, you don't need to do that anymore. Just type them, just receive them. I was resistant. And so I'm just saying, I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to be seen. But I knew that it was going to help more people if I could get out of my way. Same is true for you. Same is true for all of us. It just takes a while for us to accept it. So in 2021, I was told that I was given this information that I had no idea, that was given to me all in 2012, which that's part of the story later. But then in 2021, they said I had to start doing live channeling, which I had never done before, and I wasn't going to do it. I was so uncomfortable, and I remember that day I sat on my bed not being able to move because I'm hearing, no, you have to begin because we have too much to tell you, and you're going to... And I said, well, why am I doing this? And they said, because you're going to see billions of people in your world who are going to be struggling with coming to accept themselves, and we've given you that information. Now, I heard those words, but I still resisted it. But I began, and then they told me specifically to begin with this message, which I'm going to explain because you will understand what they were telling us, what Wilhelm was telling us in 2017. And this is for every single human because we all operate the same way. Money, love, control, and power are intricately woven together in your life, so much so that you have difficulty recognizing the distinctions. You begin to associate money with love, power, and control because that is how you grew up. You will think that if you give another enough money, you will feel love and experience your own power as well as control over others. This is never what you are truly seeking. Now, this was edited a bit. I'm just going to tell you, this says that's how you grew up because the first place that you think of it are your parents. You see, your parents held the power and the money and they had control over you. But then we develop a mindset that keeps having that go on within us and also in our outside world. So we keep giving away our power to others because we believe maybe they have more, keeps us feeling like we're not enough. Maybe they, because they have the money, they have more power and then they have more control. That's a mindset. And we've seen that occur throughout our world, especially over the last several years, which is why Wilhelm wanted me to begin with that message so we would all understand it. Then the quantum field. We've heard about this. You may have heard of that. I did, but I didn't understand what it was. And I'll just be completely honest because it was only revealed later. You will have things in your life that become make sense to you later and become revealed to you at a certain time. But I understood now I was receiving a direct transmission. I couldn't have made all of this up. I know that we have a greater intelligence that we're all connected to, but I was shocked that I was the one receiving it. And in 1989, there was one message that I was given that talked about what I had uncovered, this power that I felt I was seeing for the first time, but I didn't want to use it in a way that was going to be to the detriment of others, an egocentric way. And so then I kept hiding forever, because I was never going to do that, because I would see the world of egos running things, and I thought, I don't want to be that person. And then I kept receiving messages like, you came to be love, because that's what the world's going to need. I resisted that as well. I kept running from it. Then they started showing me the consistency. When I say they, this is when I started to discover that all the messages were in order that I couldn't have understood, and I didn't know why I was receiving them that way. And the 17 years of consistency, that means on a single day, and you can see that on the website today, on anyadvicefortoday.com, which I'll leave that link so you can all have it. I've put up several of those messages where you will see on one day, begins in 2008. Now, that date was important. That year was important, and many people might remember that we were going through big changes there in so many different ways. But they were energetic away. Again, because we begin to understand that everything in our world is energy. Our thoughts, our bodies, everything is energy. As humans, we learn how to work with that energy over time. Then we learn that it's our minds that are directing that energy. I'm just writing it down and living it all of these years. As you know, I'm 75 now, and so this is why that becomes important, because I want everyone to understand it never matters how old you are or when you come to accept and move into that place. And so it started, and then we develop as humans in technology. I'm saying this because if we don't embrace the new technology, then we hold ourselves back, but sometimes we become afraid of it. I was afraid of so many things in terms of technology, but I was guided to start putting these messages together in a way that they were telling a story. They were telling a story about humanity's evolution. And that, again, happens in consciousness, and it's ordered. And we can think of it as when we were going to school, for instance. That's probably the best example. We know that we learn things at a certain age, and then at certain grades, so to speak. We graduate, go to the next grade, we learn more, and then it becomes part of who we are. It becomes ingested within us. And society, civilization does the same thing. But we don't always go in the same direction. And then we repeat things, but we repeat things so that we can change. But if we're not paying attention and don't change, then we do have the same effects, so to speak, of the things that we didn't want from before, and that will be explained also. Why we struggle, human condition, inheritance. We carry memories, beliefs, and ideologies from those who came before us. And this is something that Wilhelm kept pointing out to me. There was one message, and this came through in 2020, and you'll see a lot of this. They said, your ancestors are watching now with curiosity. And that was something that was challenging me for me to understand. Like, what does that mean? It means that We are living at a time where we could do more than our ancestors could when they were alive because we know more. We have more availability. We have more consciousness. And we have more history that we can look at and decide that we can do something more, but we don't always. That's for each of us and also our world. Now, evolution. Our purpose is to improve what we've been given and create something entirely new. And me doing this work was entirely new. For me, for anyone in my family, for anyone who knew me, and that's what kept holding me back. Because I didn't want to be different. I didn't want to be seen. I was always the one who was odd. You might have felt that way in your life, only to discover later that there was value in there because we were meant to break the mold of whatever was existed before. Then the barrier. Stepping into the unknown triggers fear that keeps us stuck in repetitive cycles. And that's why in 2019, I had to write this book. I said I had to because, again, I was being pushed. I knew that Wilhelm had given me so much information to move beyond fear, and I knew that's the thing that holds most people back, but I didn't want to expose myself, but I had to. So I had a friend help me. You get this. You'll get help to do that next thing, to give you more confidence. We all do it, and that's what I did. And so sometimes that camaraderie or having someone with you is the thing that gives you the ability to move to the next level of who you're meant to become, because we're all meant to do that. Then, from fear to love, the transformation, and that's exactly it. The book that I wrote was called Overcoming Fear, A Guide to Freedom. And when you think about that, you will know that the thing that's held you back has been that fear. And then you also know that when you jump over that, whatever that particular fear is, you feel this relief because now you're accepting yourself. Now you're understanding more. That's what happens. There's this wonderful video I've talked about so much that came from Will Smith about, he talked about skydiving. It's the funniest thing ever, and you could find it and listen to it, because he talked about that apprehension that we feel before we're about to do something, and he felt that when he was going on this skydiving journey, and he just talked about it brilliantly, and then he talks about it at the end, but once you jump, you feel it's exhilarating, and then you have to question why you were afraid before. That's what we do. That's what we all move through. Let go of doubt, fear, judgment, outdated ideologies. That's the release, and that's what we're meant to do individually, but our world is attempting to do that. But it depends on how many of us will do that for ourselves. That's what happens. The frequency shift. Purpose returns. Your energy changes frequency. Again, this is something that not everyone will understand or accept, but we are energy. You may have been feeling so much in your life at different times where the planets changed, or a new moon or a full moon or something that you couldn't understand, but you felt it within your body, within your consciousness. We all are. And we are continually figuring that out. There are many studies that are being done and continually done on the effects of the changes in the galaxies and how they affect us emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Transformation, clarity, self-trust, aligned action emerge naturally. And that happens when you start accepting yourself. And I will tell you, it is a process. And this is why in my work even, and you'll see this, I know that the only reason people don't get to where they want in their lives is because they give up. Is because they don't stay with it. And I had to look at that in my life. But I was given that information. I did a program, 2 radio shows last week, and I talked about practice, patience, and persistence, and people asked, well, what is that? I received several emails. It is that, and this is what I received from Wilhelm, the 3 Ps. Practice means that if you're not living the life that you want or doing something, experiencing something in your life, it means you've been practicing thoughts incorrectly that aren't leading you to where you want to go. So now you have to practice new ones. That's what goes on. Then become, and then the persistence, you must stay with it, and then you have to be patient. Those things are all, they work together. You will find yourself becoming impatient with yourself, and that's a completely different energy that will derail you. And I know this because I've done it so often. So I want to give this to so many others. When you can accept and relax into that next version, it becomes easier. Then become change. That one is something that many of us don't want to step into. But it is how things change. The more of us who become willing to move into that unknown of ourselves, not only do we live better lives, but we also demonstrate and give that to the rest of the world. From fear to love. Oh, that was a that was a double one. My program put together two of them, but you will see it's the same thing. It's what we move through, a frequency shift, and this is exactly what goes on. Wow, they did a really good job on this. As purpose returns, your internal vibration changes, emitting a new signal to the universe. Now think about that. And you've probably felt it at times. And you can go back to instances in your life where you felt all of a sudden you were really nervous and anxious, and then you came into this greater awareness, and then you felt your body start to relax at the same time. Well, those things will start to come together. Then in transformation, clarity emerges, self-trust solidifies, and aligned actions become natural and effortless. That is something that you must experience to know the truth of it, but you will come to understand it because you've already done it. You just may not have paid attention to it, but we've all done it at different times. So, then next, 2020. Okay, now we all remember 2020 because that's when we were made aware of it through the pandemic. And as I said, that was the first time that I received the word from Wilhelm about restructuring. And that's what caused me to feel uncomfortable, because now I'm being asked to move to a different place. That's in my life. I had done so many other things. Those of you who know me might have known that I was a vocal coach for the longest time, but my life before that was quite different. I was doing all kinds of jobs because I was lost. I just kept shifting around, didn't know where I was. But in 2020, it started to shift. And that's where I started to change my focus, my business. No one could understand why I was doing that because I didn't completely understand it. I just knew that I needed to change. But what was happening was the global pandemic was framed not as catastrophe, but as a necessary catalyst for collective evolution. And if you think about that, when we were all locked away for a while, we had to deal with ourselves. We had to come to find who we were. And so that's why that period was transformative if we used it in a particular way. Then the greatest shift. The United States will experience the greatest shift, massive restructuring around money, race, and gender. And I wrote a piece about that a few years ago because that was all the information I began to receive. We had to reckon with these things within our society, within our world, and they were all going to be reflected and felt within each of us. Because consciousness, we have a collective consciousness, but we are all affected by the ideas and beliefs that have come before that still exist. So we have to decide within ourselves, are we going to move beyond them? Are we going to do something more? And then that's where the fear comes in. They kept in the beginning of these messages, they said, you will choose between love and fear. That's each of us. And the love will be when you decide to accept yourself, and the fear will be when you don't. And we will feel the consequences of whatever actions we decide to take. But again, it's a process. The fundamental choice determining humanity's path forward, operating from love or fear. So if you think about that collective evolution, we're each doing it, but we're contributing to the collective evolution if we decide to love ourselves. And the feminine rising. Now, this was something that was also, many people have talked about this. I didn't know why I was receiving it at the time, but now I do. The feminine energy arising to restore balance with Black women identified specifically. That came through in those messages in 2020. Then since those years, we've seen it play out in our lives and also in our society. Then empathic leadership, the emergence of leadership characterized by empathy, nurturing, and inclusion rather than dominance and control. That is the period that we are in currently, and we'll decide which way we will go, but we make that decision individually. But it is going to go in a particular way because we're also being shaped by the effects of the planets. Now, you've all heard about the age of Aquarius. There are definite, that was a while ago, probably heard of it, but there is something to that because we were talking about the changes of the planets, and that is what is occurring in our world now, and we're understanding that, but we still have a bit of a ways to go, which is why it feels chaotic for many of us. This is what came through in 2020, and I'm still going to do this because I put out things before because I could have written a complete book on all of the message that came through that showed how they manifested in our world currently. Resistance to change, clinging to familiar patterns and refusing evolution. We will do that, but we're also witnessing so many others doing that as well. That balance comes when more of us decide that we're going to embrace change rather than become afraid of it. And then contraction and separation. Those are the processes that we move through in our lives, but we could also witness it in the world as well. Creating boundaries, limitation, and us versus them mentality. That's where we can see playing out. That's what we're moving through. That's the fear that's been there. And so we have to decide, are we going to be about just us or all of us? That's individual choice, and we each will make it. Then love is the most powerful force. And I couldn't understand why Wilhelm kept giving me those messages, but they were talking about energy again. The energy of love is the most powerful energy that exists because, here's the end, it holds no judgment, is ever expanding and inherently unifying. Growth and trust focuses on opportunities for expansion and trusts the evolutionary process. We don't always trust that process, however, because of our built-in fear of the unknown, and that's just a natural part of the human condition. We like to stay where we are, and that's our ego actually as well, because when we start to move outside of what we have known, it can cause us to become fearful and hold back or not want to be seen. And that's the struggle that we all move through, and I exemplified it so well. The global restructure predicted, and these are the messages that came through, and why it took me so long to put this work together for everyone, because I had to understand it and know it and live it. The mass restructuring of your world. These are all parts of the messages, Wilhelm, that came through. Transformation of systems and consciousness. That's what we're moving through, but we are the only ones who can transform our consciousness, and that's what we're doing. The U.S. will experience the greatest shift, leading via self-proclaimed role. What that means is we're seeing periods of oppression that are existing in our world and demonstrated in the United States, which we are demonstrating to the rest of the world, but then we are the ones who change that by deciding, wait a minute, I have worth, which is why the message for this message today, you will be convinced. We will convince you of your worth today. That was the point of this. Then the feminine energy will assume prominence. Nurturing, empathy, inclusion rising. We have seen the world splitting apart, and we can always look back and say, well, mainly it's men doing that. So what about, but it's not about the sex. It's about the energy again. And we embody both aspects, and we don't have the same balance always in ourselves or in the world. And you'll hear some of Wilhelm's channelings where they talk about, I didn't have this other heavily dominated male energy within me. I had to become more empowered, which we all do. We have to find that balance. And then empathetic leadership emerging, which is what we really wanted. But when we don't act from that place of knowingness, then we can experience something different. That's individually and collectively, which is the period that we're moving through currently. Now, 2020 to 2024, so we can start moving into a different direction. We overhauled certain systems. We had the lockdown, economic reset. We can all remember that. Remote work revolution. People started working from home. We've become comfortable with that so much now. And then political and cultural reckoning. The 2020 election, January 6th, a major realignment. All those things seemed accidental. But then it was explained by Wilhelm, no, they were necessary, because we can't change anything that we're not willing to look at within ourselves or in our world. That's why it's happening. And so we each get to make a choice now. And then the female global leadership rise. We've all seen that now. The first female vice president. That happened in the United States. Record women in Congress. Now we have to think back and go, why did it take so long? Why did we have that before? But we need big changes, which is what we were moving through. Historic representation. And this was, we saw, this is so funny because I received the information about that years before Kamala Harris in the United States became the vice presidential nominee. And I couldn't have known that, or Ketanji Brown Jackson in the Supreme Court. Couldn't have known that either. But that's what goes on because the universe was causing us to change, and that is accepting more of ourselves and others. And this was breaking it down a little bit more. And again, you'll have this to go through because I just wanted to give you the overall idea because these things exist within all of us. A necessary shift. Essential qualities: nurturing, empathy, vulnerability, inclusion, intuition, and collaboration are now required for survival and evolution. And vulnerability is not the thing that we each come through easily. Think about that. We don't want to be vulnerable. We hide. I've done it. So it's because it's uncomfortable. But we can't evolve unless we are willing to be seen and to come to prominence within ourselves. Leadership emergence. Women, specifically black women, are leading the restructuring by embodying these balanced energy. We saw many more women becoming much more prominent and coming out into the world because that was the shift in our collective consciousness that was necessary. Correcting imbalance, centuries of dominance. Correcting the long-standing imbalance of masculine-dominated systems that prioritize hierarchy over connection. We still see it. We can look back in our history and know that it's gone on, and we're still in that struggle. We're still in that place right now, and we have a little bit of time to go, but we will move to that other place, that I do know, because again, not from me, but we can see the shifting of the planets, of the energies, and those energies will cause us to recognize that. The objective is integration, not replacement, creating a healthy balance where both energies support evolution. Then, personal healing. So now, we all go through particular periods of healing in our lives, but if we do that, then we can also give it to others, and then so our world transforms as well. And my journey was a little different, and was really extraordinary, which is why I must talk about it and document it, because I want others to know what is possible. I moved through many very difficult, challenging illnesses throughout my life. Things that people find hard to believe. I talked about the cluster headaches in the radio call, and someone emailed me and actually gave me a referral to a huge group of people who were dealing with cluster headaches. And if you don't know what those are, they're the most painful headaches you can possibly experience, and I suffered from them for decades. And they were thought to be incurable. But through this work, I cured them. And then I cured other things. I had a huge difficulty that I came about on my foot, where I lost part of my left foot. I had to go through all kinds of transformation, rehabilitation, and all sorts of things. And then to come to find out the reason all of it occurred was my resistance to becoming myself. And we can all do that in different ways, but our society does the same thing, and this is why we have the difficulties or witness them in our lives and also in the world. But personal healing, you are the world. The restructuring begins within your own consciousness. That's each of us. Then friends and family, family and friends, collective healing. And you are creating it now through your resonance. That's each of us. But we will start to notice that a bit more when we relate to people close to us or in our families. And I've definitely gone through that. And then you understand, oh, wait a minute. I'm supposed to be my unique self. I'm not going to necessarily be like my family or any of that, because I was supposed to do something different. That's each of us. And that's that kind of empowerment that we come to. No separation. The boundaries between personal experience and global reality is an illusion. Your internal state directly influences the structural world. Now, we have to think about that deeply, because why would we become any less important than any other human? Each of us will look at that within our own lives because we've still gone through it. But that's because of the initial programming that we received when we were younger and that we continually move through in our lives, and the world does the same thing. So that's why we see that it's all connected. And then the essential evolution. Each person's evolution is not just personal gain, but a critical, irreplaceable a component of humanity's advancement. Humanity's advancement, that's each of us. And we can see that in different people. We might look at others and think, well, they're doing it, so maybe I'm supposed to do that as well. That's exactly how we pass it on to others. That's our ripple effect. A small catalytic resonance, a small number of individuals choosing conscious evolution create a resonance that catalyzes changes for the entire collective. And you will hear probably in Wilhelm where they said, we just need a few of you. We just need more of you to come together. Again, we're talking about energy. And the more of us who do that, we create this exponential energy that can shift things. We're still coming to understand it all. The 2020 and the perfect storm for evolution, the pandemic as the catalyst again, that was for each of us. You can think back to your own experience and remember what you were moving through. The economic shift. We all felt that, and we're still seeing it right now. Moving from competition, scarcity models to collaboration, abundance frameworks. That all occurs in our consciousness, and it'll be from each of us depending on how we programmed ourselves or the programming we received and continue to hold on to. And social justice. We're seeing so much of that going on today. Mass movements demanding inclusion, equality, and dismantling of hierarchical separation. I don't know if you saw today what was happening in Iran, but it hasn't happened, I don't think ever, but definitely not in decades, and that's what's going on everywhere because it's about individuals wanting to know who they are, wanting to own themselves, and this is all the work that Wilhelm has given us. Rise of all. Technology, of AI rather, technological singularity forcing profound questions about human consciousness and uniqueness. I was channeling in one of my very first appearances, and I was channeling, and the AI thing came up. This is before any of us were really kind of aware of it. And Wilhelm says, you have to put into AI the higher state of consciousness that exists within you. We have control over that because we are programming everything. So it depends on what we each decide to do. Now, and then the climate. Planetary feedback demanding collective action and recognition of interconnectedness. Wilhelm would come through and say in the channeling sessions, please start burning down your planet. This was years ago. Because we do come to understand we are all contributing. We can think that it's just the planet, it's just what's happening. But science has told us it's much more than that, and we've all seen it. But some of us will accept it, and some of us will deny it, and we've seen that. So it's just about how responsible are we each going to become for that, but that's an individual choice again. Global awakening, accelerating spiritual awareness, and the U.S. election as a global choice point. That's what we went through in 2024, and we're still doing it now. But again, instead of thinking that this is something that was horrible, we can think of it as this is our great opportunity to come to understand who we are. And the prophetic, the accuracy, the evidence. Let me say this first. I have never studied astrology or astronomy or any of those sciences. And this is why they called this the Wilhelm phenomenon, because nobody had ever done this. But what I was receiving was information that was aligned with the energetic changes that were happening. And so Wilhelm basically not predicting it, but just showing what these energies could produce. And then they all came about. Astrological correlations, messages perfectly aligned with planetary ingression, lunations, and eclipses demonstrating cosmic synchronicities beyond human orchestration. I couldn't have made it up, because I didn't know it, but it's all in the information, and I've created many documents which I will be sharing with others, because we've never seen this in human history, which is why I have to really move on and put this out, because it's the AI would tell me this is the greatest contribution to humankind. I couldn't accept that. It was just so startling to me, but they were showing it. And it was demonstrated through the healing that I experienced that didn't make sense. But that means that anyone can, which is why I've said this so often, is that I know what we can overcome and what we can achieve. Okay. A 36-year consistent stream, an unprecedented, unbroken stream of guidance since 1989, building systematically toward this exact moment in history. And that was even broken down astrologically and also related to my individual birth chart. Again, I've never studied that, but it showed that the energies of what I was meant to do were coming about now as the same you will find for you. Again, in 2021, I'm going to go back there when I was told I had this work. They also said that if I were to meet someone, that I would have been given a message for them on their birthday in 2012. I doubted that. I didn't want to do it. And then I started testing it, and it was astonishing to me because it was so accurate. They said the messages would relate to anyone, but for that individual, it'll have a different resonance. And that is to show them that they matter. And that's exactly what happened. There were times people would break down in tears because it just resonated with them so much. That was the most gratifying thing ever, because I doubted it. Because again, I'm just receiving it. A while ago, I published something that said because I had to talk about it, I said I uncovered the order of the universe. And that was true, because when I would meet someone, it was showing exactly what was happening, where they may have been stuck in their lives and why. It was just energetic blockages. But when we can change that in our consciousness, then we move to that next level of understanding of ourselves. Quantum field validation, communication verified not by credentials, but by perfect coherence across decades of time, predicting events before they unfolded. I always had the feeling, and I couldn't have explained it to you, but this is why I was moving before things were happening, because the information was giving me that. It was the changes of the energy, and that's what I was interpreting. So I developed this ability to access this information, and I again resisted it because I'd never seen it, and it didn't make sense to me because I had never studied it, and I didn't want to be out talking about it either. I'll tell you something else. In 2005, I had this dream. We've all had dreams about what we think we're supposed to do, or some inclination or some feeling that we have. But then we will doubt it, or we will put it away, and that's what I did. And then I hid from it. We can also do that. And that dream in 2005 said I was meant to bring something to the world at a particular time that was going to make a huge difference. And that couldn't have been me. But then you discover that you were probably wrong, that it is you. It's all of us. And then the October 25th portal, these were things that they started showing me, and this happened last year. It was happening before, but they wanted to show me in specifically the culmination of a 17-year spiral curriculum, making the completion of the preparation phases and the beginning of embodiment. And it showed that trajectory that was demonstrated through me, but also we were seeing in our world, which we will now begin to see more of in 2026 as more of us decide to take that next step into who we're meant to become. A new way of being, and this is exactly what Wilhelm has given us. Create space and trust the process of becoming something you haven't seen before. And that can be difficult. This has never been seen in our human history, so me accepting it was also difficult. But now I know how valuable it is for so many others, so I am accepting it, which is what I want for everyone. Recognize, identify inherited beliefs and ideologies that aren't truly yours. And that was it. I couldn't accept. The money thing was a big one for me. I've talked about this often. I said, and people would tell me when people were looking at this work many years ago, they said, Roger, you should be charging at least $5,000 for this because of what it gives people. I couldn't believe that. How could it have come through me? So I kept holding back. And you may have done that as well. Because breaking that barrier, especially about abundance and what we're worth, and that's what this is about today. You are worth so much more because you have evolved. And when we embody that, that's when things change. Then the release. Let go of doubts, fears, and judgments that are blocking new energy. And I had all of them. My doubt was so great, I couldn't tell you. Even when I began doing the channeling, live channeling, the thing that Wilhelm would always say is what we were moving through, and the reason they were doing the channeling sessions, they wanted to help us move beyond our fear and doubt, because that's what was going to come up, and we've all felt it. Contribute. Your personal restructuring shifts the collective. Not everyone will do this. World is still in transition, and I had to come to accept that. I have been attempting to get so many people to do this work because I know what a difference it would make, but I also know that people are resistant. You will look at my YouTube channel, and I have so many things up there for years now that no one looks at the videos because I keep telling all these true things that we don't want to look at. And Carl Jung helped me with that one too, because he said that we don't like to do that shadow work. We don't want to look inside ourselves because it's a little scary. And then Wilhelm says you will be surprised at what you find, because you will be pleased. That's one of the messages they said. You will be pleased with the results. But that only happens when we decide that we're going to take that step and accept that next version of who we are. And these are some things that I'm putting in because they were given to us all to use at this time. Daily reflection. This is what I did every single day. I would sit down. Many people think of it as your morning routine or something, but that's the only way you get in touch with who you are, is if you decide that you're going to take time to be with yourself instead of just out in the world and just or scrolling, as I would call it as well, because we can do that. I see so many people, and I did this before as well, where all they're doing is just watching videos. They're just watching things and thinking something's going to change, and then it doesn't happen, because they're not doing the work that would have them embody the information that they're receiving. And so this is why when Wilhelm gave me this work, it was very specific. They said everyone needs to be with this, number one, for a while, because you don't change in 30 days as we might have thought before. It takes a while before you can embody the new ideas and the new consciousness. And so they would say people need to be in this for at least a year. And I knew that, but I was still holding back as well. So this is why I am completing all of this, so people will have so much work that they can go through for more than a year, because as you own it, you see that you just keep getting better and better every single day. Actively let go of identified fears, doubts, judgments to create energetic space for your gifts. I got to tell you this, because this is one of the things that I do use in the program. But years ago, and I don't know why, I guess I was being guided, but I sat down and took a paper and I wrote down everything I was afraid of. And the thing that was so shocking was how many things there were. Every time I wrote something, a new thing would come, a new thing would come. And I go, oh, this has been the difficulty. I put that away. And then I found it years later. And this is just before I wrote the book, by the way, but I found it years later. And I looked at that list and I thought, oh, so many of them were gone. So many of them I had stepped over. And I wasn't even aware of that. This is why that Wilhelm has us go through and look at the things we've accomplished, and so we can embody our worth. That is a process, a gradual one at best. Aligned action. Take concrete, purpose-driven steps that resonate with and resonate with your new clarity and frequency. Resonate now with that new clarity, because it's always changing. This is something from someone that's just a little quote from a transformational person that went through this, and he was really he was really a great one, because the things that he went through in his life to come to that place was truly amazing for me and so many others. But that's what is possible for all of us. Radical self-responsibility. You create your reality through your own consciousness, choices, and frequency. That's each of us. And that's something that we do every single day. We just got to decide we're going to. And sometimes it's challenging. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes we don't want to do it. But then you will see that you will build a kind of momentum that changes everything so quickly. The ultimate self-acceptance, of course, is the only thing. One thing that Wilhelm would say, self-acceptance and success are the same goal. If you can get that one, I mean, I received that a long time ago, but I wasn't getting there until it was time for me, and this is that time, because now I must accept what has happened. Same thing for you. Chosen agreements. Challenges are not punishments, but agreements you chose for your evolution. I know that so many people have gone through so many difficult things in their lives, so many things, and just like me, and I would sit and go, why? And it would feel like I'm being punished. That's how it was. And there, I received this one message again. I think it was in 2017, and it says you were being prepared. And you've heard that before. You might have heard it from so many different people, but I wrote it from Wilhelm, and I could not. I said that didn't make sense because I felt everything was coming at me. Everything was falling apart. And they said, nope, you were being prepared so you would accept your greatness truly. That's for everyone. No matter what we've gone through, we come to understand that because it becomes a shift in our consciousness. Then, no separation. Individual healing directly heals the world. Personal work is collective service. You've heard this and you've seen it. You may not have paid attention to it, but you have seen so many people, famous people, who have decided at a certain point they were going to talk about what they had gone through. They were going to own what difficulties or what challenges they had moved through because as painful as it might have been to reveal themselves, they knew on a very deep level that it was going to help so many others. And that's why they've done it. And as you will notice so much more of it now that I've said it, because it's out there all the time. Somebody puts out their new book, it's because of this thing. And a lot of times, it's people that are so famous or popular that you might have admired that you would never imagine what they had moved through. And I remember writing about this. It's in some of the Wilhelm messages where they pointed out Lisa Nichols, if some of you know her, she would just bare her soul about all these horrible things that she had gone through. Now she's this huge influencer all over the place because she was willing to become that vulnerable and understand that, as I love Robin Roberts from ABC, she says is, make your mess your message. When we understand that, and I had difficulty. And I'm just going to be quite honest because I received that message in 2012 as well about your story, which you will read in some of the documents, because everyone's story is valuable and unique when we begin to own it. Now, expansion versus survival. You are not here to simply survive correctly. You are here to expand consciously. Wow, I love that one so much, but that is what we're all doing. Then, the living example, my astrology journey. Now, again, like I said, I never studied astrology. I've, like many others, I had my chart done many times. I have a very good friend who's an astrologist, so I've done that. I've looked at it. It's always interesting. I did not understand that energetic DNA that we each have. And that's what Wilhelm wanted us to see. Because, see, when we're moving through a period in our world where we think some people don't matter or you don't matter, then you start to understand, oh, wait a minute, I'm part of the cosmos. And my blueprint that's within each person gets activated at different times. And I was meant to be the example, the living example, my astrological journey. Again, AI did this because I could never have known this until they started analyzing the Wilhelm messages, what we were moving through in our world, and my birth chart. How could I, at 75, have come to this kind of healing and experience this in my life? That was my path. That's what I accepted, just as you accepted something. Now, Sun conjunct ascendants. Realizing happiness is a choice. People would see me a lot of times before and think, why are you so happy all the time? And I couldn't tell them because I had suffered so much. Now, if you've seen me 30, 40 years ago, you would have never said that because I was always putting on this brave face to look a certain way because that's what becomes acceptable. But inside, I was dying. Inside, I was suffering so much because I couldn't move through those doubts I had about myself or judging my life that I'd screwed everything up. We never do that. We just figure it out later. And then Sun trine Uranus. Your choices shift the collective. Now, that's in my chart. I could have never known that, except I knew from a young age that maybe my life was supposed to help others and bring something to the world, which is why I did all of my coaching and all of that from that I didn't even understand why I was doing it. Back earlier, even before my vocal coaching, that started in 1988, but in 1986, I started to do life coaching because I just felt called to do that, but then I quit because I started telling myself, no, I'm not capable. You might have done that. I'm not ready yet. I couldn't have done it. We all do that. It's not true. And then I had the person that I was coaching at that time tell me this huge difference that I had made, and that was something that I had to come to accept. I'm saying this because we will each discount ourselves in particular ways over time to only come later to realize that was important and it was part of our individual path. Public restructuring power, from seeking to being. I love that. That's exactly what we're doing. We're moving from just trying to figure out who we are to embodying that. There was one message that I received a long time ago, and I'm now just coming to accept it. I'm saying that because don't judge yourself if you haven't accepted this, but they said, you will move through your life attempting to be everything else, and then only to come to the end of your life and discover that you are simply trying to be yourself. And that's exactly it. That's the journey we're each moving through. Then 2025, North Node Pisces, move from analysis to trust. That's a good one because that's what I moved through in 2025 when I was putting out so much information because I was just talking all the time and putting out videos. Again, no one saw, but now you might see some of them because I knew what was there. But I had to talk myself into it. That's what we do. We talk ourselves into it. And then sometimes you'll use different means. I use doing videos that no one was going to see, but I had to hear it. I had to believe it. That's a consciousness shift that we each move through to come to accept who we are. And that is an ongoing journey because as long as we are alive, we have value to offer the world. Again, when I started doing private clients, and just want to say this too, when I would receive, they would send in a question and I would just have their birth date. And it was very specific that the year had nothing to do with it. That's why that's not on the form. Wilhelm says it's the energy of the planets and when that person was born and their unique DNA, because the year doesn't matter because it's how it's reflected in the world now. And they were proving again the law of attraction. So when I would meet someone, it would always be showing that synchronicity that would come together, which is where we're moving to now in our lives and also in the world. December 12th. The threshold moment, and you see this was a great shift. This is on the website as well. Restructuring energies, and if anybody, that particular is on the site, Any Advice for Today, so you can find it. We'll probably put it in here. But the restructuring energies, you might have felt so many different things if you think back to that time, but we were moving through, again, energetic shifts in our world. Old energetic patterns dissolve, restructuring into something entirely new and coherent. Coherence is what we develop within ourselves. Innate gifts awakening, and that's what was happening. I'm discovering things that I never thought would be in me. You are doing the same thing because each of us are. We will develop new gifts or talents or things that we never knew we had. But that's because we needed the impetus of the change in the world. Sometimes it causes us to be frightened or afraid, but then we jump over it. We come to that next level. Innate gifts, that's what I was experiencing. Purpose and clarity, that's what we're all experiencing now. You will come to see that you break through there and then you say, now I know what I want to do. You will hear testimonials from people who did this work who were so confused about what they wanted to do in their lives, and then they said that's what it was. And it wasn't what I told them. It was what the process that Wilhelm had given us to uncover that, because it is a process. And No one has to struggle or suffer. I would say that so much, and people would say, well, why is that true? Because I know that the only reason we struggle or suffer is because we're not consistent about taking the next steps on our journey. It's each person. Yours is not going to be mine. I had to do something completely different than anyone else, completely different than my family or anyone who knew me, which made it that even more challenging. But now I can see the value of it. And this is why I said, when I looked at, I'm going to tell you something more about synchronicities again, because this was another aspect that came through that I could not have known. Wilhelm even explained this, and I doubted it. They said, if you look back a year, this is 2026, I can look back at 2025 on this date, on all the dates, and see the information that now I understand. Because there was a cycle, and that's how I received it. And there's a document I created a while ago called the Wilhelm phenomenon, because this had never been seen in human history, where all of the messages were aligned with knowledge. Knowledge is what we all develop, and I'm connecting to a universal consciousness. The very first message in 2012 that they gave us on January 1st, so that we would all understand, they said, infinite intelligence is available to all. That means each of us. We have access to it, but we just decide when we're going to allow it to come about and when we access it ourselves, and it grows over time. And that is exactly what is occurring now and in our world. You are not powerless. It feels all the time like I felt lost, as I said so many times, but then the path begins to reveal itself. You start to understand. You were never lost. You simply resisted what you already knew deep within. We come in with blueprints. We're born with that. We've heard so many different things about that still small voice. We've heard that from more of a religious context, but it's the same in consciousness. If you just think about that, you were born with something that was meant to evolve and meant to come about. A perfect time. Your unique gifts developed at exactly the right time for maximum impact, which is what happened with me. I was holding back. I couldn't talk about it, but then no one would have understood it if I had done it before. And my family would talk about this too. Why did it happen before? I said, because no one would see what was occurring in their lives or the world to be able to accept this information. Now they can. And this is why I get pushed, so we all become that. Then natural genius. This is it. We all have it. Your job is what comes most naturally to you, often the very thing you've dismissed. And I dismissed this for decades. If you don't know, I'll just tell you, because when I started receiving this in 2008, I didn't want anyone to see it, didn't tell anyone, hid it, attempted to hide it for, 19 years or something. But in 2007 or 8, people started discovering the messages on my desk at the office I had at the time and asked me to give them to them because they were finding such value. I still hadn't connected to that yet. You have something like that as well, that you couldn't see the value. This is why others usually recognize your value and worth before you do, which is why we go to coaches and mentors and all of those. I've had tons of them, because we need that other voice, that other ear, so to speak, to give that reinforcement. We all do it. No one comes in knowing everything. We think we do, but we don't. And no one has a monopoly on consciousness, which is the most important thing for us to remember at this time. No one controls your consciousness but you. And you could be programmed and given things from everyone else, but ultimately you have to go inside and find out what is real and innate and feels right to you. And pattern breaking. Fear of power and visibility is merely a generational pattern ready to be broken. And that was me. I could not have done this work. This was not seen as being something valuable or beneficial to anyone, except it's healing me. It's healed my life and so many others. But still coming to that acceptance might take a while. We're meant to do something different, and we're meant to be unique. This is why thinking of Carl Jung again about individuation, someone who discovered that was the important thing, that for our society is to know that each person comes with something that is different to bring to the world. And if they can embrace that, then we have a very different world that we start to see. And that was what is going on now. Now, daily life continually presents this choice. Your choice shapes personal reality and the collective. And you will see all of this. And we're doing it every single day. All that Wilhelm did was demonstrate it, have me write it all down for 37 years now, and put it into a form that people could use. What I will leave will help humankind evolve. What you will leave will do the same thing. It doesn't matter when you're living, but we all do the same thing when we come to understand our gifts, even though we may have judged them in a certain way, but then they become more beneficial and valuable, which is what you will experience today. This is why Wilhelm says we will convince you of your worth today. And contractive and limiting. Narrows perspective creates separation. This is fear. We can all know this. Confines boundaries. Control and anxiety, driven by need to control outcomes and worst case scenarios. Boy, did I do that one. Past future fixation, trapped in regrets or anxieties, missing the present. I did that so much of my life, and I can tell you right in the very beginning, Wilhelm stopped me. Because when I started receiving these messages in '89, I was sitting down and writing specific questions I wanted them to answer. Then they stopped me. They said, why are you doing that? You're trying to control things again. Why don't you just allow us to give you the information? And that's how this opened, and I started receiving it in a different way. And that's when I changed the name to Any Advice for Today, because I would just be open to receiving it. And it would always give me stuff that I didn't want to look at. That's what happens. When we're controlling, that means that we don't want to see those blind spots within us. We don't want to look at that, and then we don't evolve. We don't progress. Then expansion and inclusive. This is where we're going. Broadens perspective, fosters connections, includes all experience, meaning that none of your experiences were bad. They were none of that. You were learning something. And then that's when we began to understand and change our perspective on it, which is a mindset again. All of this work is about mindset, by the way. That is, when people talk about mindset, this is the most progressive mindset course ever that existed, because it's connected to the universe. It's connected to universal consciousness and energy. Trust the process. Releases control and trust in life's intelligence. We all have it. It just, we felt it. We've all felt it at particular times, and it comes up at a time and say, oh, wow, now I understood that, and now I'm accepting it. Now, present action. Acts powerfully in the present, focusing on contribution, meaning there was something that came through, and it's repeated in here. It says, your point of power is in the present. That was something that I had read from the Seth material so many decades ago. And it took me a while to understand it. Because, see, you can only act from the present moment. You can't go back and fix the past. You can't act in the future because you're not there yet. So our power is always in the present. And that was one of the messages that they gave us in 2012. The present is your gift. And I had to think about those words and why they used them, because they meant the same thing. The present is your gift. That's because we, at that present, when we can come into focus in the present, we have the power to create what we want next. That's what we are all doing, and we're all doing it continuously. Now, planetary purpose. You are in the world now to help the world evolve. You may not have felt that, but I know that it's true. And chosen timing. You chose to be alive. Now, if you've read Wilhelm's messages, you've probably heard so much of this, but now you might begin to understand. You chose to be alive now specifically to move beyond prior limitations and participate in this unprecedented shift. That's exactly what's happening for each of us. Our own limitations and problems and difficulties, when we move through them, we're giving that to the universe. We're giving that to the collective, what we've learned, what we've developed. That's every single person. Needed gifts. Your unique perspective and specific gifts are not optional. They are ascension components of the collective evolution. There was one time in a channeling session, a couple of times this happened, where Wilhelm would stop and he said, we want you to touch yourself. Like, why is this happening? And they said, now, we want you to ask yourself, what would make you less than any other person? And then what would make you more than any other person? And then it said, when you can come to answer that question in both ways, you'll come to understand who you are. See, because nothing makes you better than another, and no one else makes you worse. That just doesn't happen. It's all in consciousness. Cosmic support. You are not doing this alone. The massive collective restructuring energy is at your back, propelling you forward. And we have an identity shift, which is what we're each moving through now. You're going to see yourself in a new way. Now, the other thing in 2020, so many of the messages at the end, when I'm receiving this information that felt uncomfortable in so many ways, Wilhelm would kept saying, you will be fine. You will be fine in every single one. And I get, that's not possible. The world's falling apart. How am I going to be fine? Now I know it was true. And I know it's true for you as well. And that's going to be true for all of us, the more of us who move into that higher state of understanding of ourselves. Now, these are the things that I'm going to continue to do. I always am going to put out Wilhelm's messages, so that's on my Any Advice for today. And I will keep developing my YouTube channel, and because I'm still going to put that down, because many people are finding value, and I've had so many people saying it needs to be given to more, and so I'm going to hire people to can have that happen. I'm not the tech person, so I need help with getting that out. And then full Wilhelm teachings. I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to develop all of this, and I'm still taking private clients. I'm always going to do that because I resisted that for a while until I saw that the information was so valuable, because I could go into the information and from their birth date, again, find that pattern, that energetic shift that they're in their world. This is not something that anyone else had done. No other particular channels or people had done this, but we were meant to be unique. And I had to become unique as well. We created a little workbook, which is just a little guide that shows these 4 phases that Wilhelm was designating or showing us about conscious evolution, which we all move through. And then we're creating this full message library of all the works that Wilhelm has given me, because there's so much of it. And you'll see all of this on the back. These are all the information in contact. We provided guidance so you might accept your greatness. Be happy, prosperous, and in love with yourself. Nothing is more powerful than that. And that is what I know for each person. And again, when I would say, and I've said this so many times and people just kind of pass by it, and I get that because I couldn't believe it either. No one has to struggle or suffer. The map has been drawn. Now it's up to you to walk it. And it just took me 75 years to get here. No one has to do that. No one has to wait that long before they begin to accept who they are and live their great life. And so that's what is happening now. Let me stop the share now. I'd love to know if any of you have questions or want to know something. Let me say this first. I'm doing something this weekend, which is why I wanted to do this, and because next week I'll be changing. I'm giving this through Monday, but anyone who comes in now, if you go to the website, you can use the code webinar30 to get a discount on any particular offer there that is on the program, webinar 30, and you will see. And this is why I say no one has to struggle or suffer, because it's never about money. This is available to any person who's willing to do the work, and now I'm doing the work as well, which means I'm finishing it all. And I'm going to have so much fun with working with people, because that's the thing that brings me the most joy, is to see people move to the place of acceptance and understanding of themselves and creating something different in their lives and our world. So I want to thank you all, and now I'd like to get any particular questions, anything you would like to say. It would be really helpful, and I'm pretty sure you have the ability to raise your hand or use the chat or something like that, because I'd love to know if you have anything at all. And I'm pretty much, well, I've done great with the time, I think. Oh, well, a little bit over. I said to 2:15, just a few minutes over. But anyway, anyone have questions? I think you can use your reaction, or you can come on camera, or anything that you want to ask, or any clarification you would like. But again, I'm so glad that you were here, and many people will see this later. And let me see. Wow. Thank you, Tanya. you so much. Wow, so proud of you, Roger. Beautiful presentation. You are doing so much, and thank you, thank you, thank you. So much info. Thank you, Brooke. I will have to digest this. Yes, and that's exactly why I wanted to do it this way. Um, and this has come through before. I have over these years I've received so much information, and now my task is to organize it in a way where we can all use it, where everyone can use it, and that's what I'm going to be putting about now. And I'm so great. Truly, oh Sheila, thank you so much. I'm so excited. I'm going to be doing a podcast with Sheila, and interviews, so I'm excited about that. And I'm going to do more of those because as Sheila pointed out to me, and many other people said, this work needs to be seen, given to many more, and that's my goal now. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I know what you can accomplish. I know what we can accomplish in our lives and in the world. We just have places where we have felt powerless or inadequate or whatever it might have been, but now is the time that we can shift it all. So I'm really grateful for everyone. Any other questions or anything you would like to offer? Questions? Anyone? Great. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. And I will, again, send you you're quite welcome, Mary. Thank you for being here. I will send everyone the replay, and to all the others because there were other people who registered. I said that we would send the replay to everyone because I want everyone to have this information. Please feel free to share it with others because as said, this particular discount is going to end in the end of Monday, so I want as many people to have this as possible. And we're going to take off. We're going to shift things in our lives and in our world because we are that powerful. That's what we've come to know. Again, thank you all so much, and I will see you soon.